You want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay. Should we go through and say, like, so far if we like the book again for, like, a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. You can start.
I thought the book was good, but at times it was kind of boring and hard to get into. But like other times, I was like really interested in reading it.
Towards the end, I started to like it. I agree. It was kind of a little boring because, like, I don't read books like this, but towards the end, it was interesting because, like, I understood, like, the whole reason why he, like, wrote it and stuff, and I thought it was important.
Yeah, the first couple of chapters was hard to get into, and so it's kind of hard, a little difficult to read it. But as you went through the book, you kind of get interested.
I'm kind of with Caitlin. Once you really kind of finish it and realize why he wrote the book, it does seem a little bit better thinking of reading like all the first chapters and stuff and going through it.
Okay. In the chapter Good Form, O'Brien ends with the quote, "Daddy, tell the truth," Kathleen can say, "Did you ever kill anybody?" And I can honestly say, of course not. Or I can say honestly, yes. What does O'Brien mean when he says that his honest answer could be both no and yes?
I think like he means like he might not have shot him, but seeing someone get shot or seeing someone shoot almost like makes you feel like you did because you could see everything that happens as like if you did. But he might not have been the one that pulled the trigger, but he was still like a witness of it.
Yeah, because in the chapter "The Man I Killed," he never specifically said that he was the man that shot the boy. He just saw the boy dead, and like witnessing that, he felt the guilt of if he actually killed him.
Yeah, and like it also talks about how like he was really sad or like he didn't like that he did it, and then like some guy came up and like comforted him saying it was like a good shot and all this stuff. But even then, he still wasn't like happy about it because he's not sure if it's like him in a way. Right?
Kind of discuss it like that. Everybody like says their thoughts on it.
So I guess I'll say a question. When the army had to start living the nightlife, Rat Kiley shot himself in the toe so he could go to Japan. Why did he shoot himself in the toe, and how much courage do you think it took for him to do it?
He shot himself in the toe because he wanted to get out of the war, but it probably took a lot of courage because he didn't want to be seen as a coward and like he was taking the easy way out.
Yeah, because I think the way why he wanted to take the easy way out is because he's seen so many of his friends die in front of him, and he didn't want to be the next one, and so he didn't really have much else for him. So he just wanted to get out of it.
The book always like comes back to wanting to be like a coward almost. Like
Yeah.
he didn't want to not go to Vietnam because he didn't want to be a coward. They didn't want to do this because they'd be known as a coward. Like everything they do is like a cow, like fear of being a coward.
Fear.
Yeah.
Here it says like he's talking about like a few of his friends, and it says like, and how crazy it was that people who were so incredibly alive could be so incredibly dead, and like he's a medic, or I think is what it says here somewhere, and like it's just it really got to him because he's thinking of like all of his friends are like there, and every time he stays there like longer, it's just more times that he's thinking of like, oh hey, he lost these friends, or he could lose more and more and more, and he really wanted to just get out of the possibility of losing more people.
When the soldiers are searching for Kiowa in the shit field, why is everyone blaming themselves for losing him?
I feel like they're all kind of like blaming themselves because they think that they could have like done something to save him. Like
Yeah.
they all kind of just like watched.
Like it was like they maybe like
Weren't they being like shot at the time, or what was it?
I can't really remember, but
Yeah, I did a journal on this.
What page was it on?
wait, he said like why didn't they
Why did they keep blaming themselves for losing Kiowa? Like, not a specific person. Like even if they weren't there, they still blamed themselves for losing Kiowa
they were
because they couldn't do anything.
yeah, like in the moment they probably couldn't do anything or they were too scared to do something like do anything about it. So like later on when they lost him, they probably felt the guilt that they should have done something.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's everyone's responsibility. It's like a team sport or so. It's like no man left behind, and they all just left him, sort of. I mean, even though some people did try, but there were like mistakes that happened, like his shoe fell off or like his boot fell off, and like you can't really change that, I guess. So it'd take it to heart.
Because when Norman Bowker is telling a story about like how he almost won the Silver Star, like this is where this is from, because he said he won 7 awards during the war, but he lost the Silver Star because he was there and he could have been the man to save Kiowa, but he couldn't stand the smell, and because he lost possibly his best friend to something that kind of, I guess you could call it embarrassing. Like he lost the award, but he didn't really care about the award because like the one thing he lost over Vietnam was his friend.
And like it says in the book, like First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross stood 50 meters away. He had finished writing the letter in his head, explaining things to Kiowa's father. Like that was his way of coping with the death of Kiowa. Like he wrote letters to his family because he felt like he was the one who he blamed himself for the death of Kiowa.
Yeah, it's Kiowa.
The whole like situation of them like not helping him when they like could have is kind of like in a sport. Like when someone falls down, it's just to make it a connection. But like when someone falls down, you all want to go help them up. But like in like basketball, say they fell down like rebounding something, but your team has the ball. It's not like you can just go back and help that person up then.
Yeah,
You know?
it's like in a wrestling match when like I lose a match because I did something when I could have done something else. I get off the mat, I'm like, oh man, I could have done that move to win that match, but like I can't go back.
It's like I get what you're saying. It's like in basketball, like you play against your friends because you know people from other schools, and like they go down, you're like, oh, I want to help them up, but like if you get the steal or like your team's already running towards the other end, you can't really go back and help pick them up. You have to like keep going, but then like you kind of feel bad because you didn't go. And I feel like sports aren't like as big of a deal, but like in our kind of like
It's like the best way we can really put it.
yeah, for us, like for our personal experiences, but for them, it's a bigger thing. Like someone died because of it, so they probably felt a little bit.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like
a lot a bit more. Like they felt way worse.
yeah, it's like I mean, like if they were getting shot at, like you said, like you asked, well, weren't they getting shot at? Then that's like the same situation. They can't really like go to help him, otherwise
There's only
they're
so much they
risking
can do.
their life. Like which some of them did, but like some of them were too scared to die. So
There's also one part of that chapter 2 when they're searching for Kiowa. One boy's like, it's all my fault because he turned on a flashlight to show his buddy that he was camping with a picture of his girlfriend, and they start taking mortar fire, and that's what caused Kiowa to slip under the field. And so like he's blaming that on himself. Norman's blaming himself because he was actually there. Jimmy Cross is blaming himself because he's the man in charge.
And like they all like start to realize something happens. Like Jimmy Cross realized he doesn't really want to be like the leader. He never wanted to be in charge of all of them, but he kind of just got put there.
Uh-huh.
So like it helps them like find something about themselves too, I guess.
me too.
All right, so like the last chapter is really like wrapping up. Oh, hey, like this is why I wrote the book, and like these are kind of like some of the reasons why I like it. Like, why do you think like he wrote the book in general? Like, what's your thought on it? Like, is it to show that why he was like in the war and stuff, or is it to just kind of like remind people that stories are a way to I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I
As
feel
long
like he
as
like
you get
wrote
it.
the book because like he needed his way out. Like in the end, he wrote like the last. I realize it as Tim trying to save Timmy's life with this story. So like maybe he's kind of like struggling or like he needs some way to outlet what he's feeling inside.
Yeah,
He
like,
lost so
this
many
is-
of his good friends.
He
and stuff.
needs a way to cope with this
Yeah, like-
huge loss and all this emotional weight, and just writing helps him get through it.
It's his way of coping with what he's feeling inside. Is right.
I feel like another reason too is like he wanted to share like what the war was really like, so that people like who have never been in a war or whatever knows what it's like. But also like he wanted to be able to tell like the stories of the people he lost through his life since he didn't die. Like that's his way of sharing their memory is through his stories.
He explains a lot like throughout like what a war story is. Like if there's a meaning behind it, it's probably not true. Or like if you ask like a soldier like a story, and more than likely he's gonna add on to it because like he needs you to feel like what he went through. Like when he went back to the chapter, like he said he shot the man. He never really shot him, but like he felt like he did. So like this is his way of letting it all out.
It kind of like how Hollywood movies, they put that Hollywood effect in there.
Yeah.
like it's not actually the true story, but like getting a story from a man who firsthand was there.
Yeah, it's like based.
In chapter 20, Jorgensen or whatever. No, it's not. We're going in the right order. We just went in a weird order. In chapter 20, Jorgensen heard O'Brien getting shot at, but he did not move to help. He says that his legs felt as though they were filled with sand. What was the reasoning behind this paralyzation, and why did the war have such an effect on new soldiers?
This is the first time. I mean, doing anything or like having something traumatic like that happen to you for like the first time, like if there was an active shooter in the school and it's like the first time this has ever happened, most people would probably freeze and be like, "Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?" But then after it's like if you're, I don't want to say experienced in it, but like if it's happened to you before, then you have like an idea on what to do and how to correctly protect everyone around you. And for them, it's just that really.
So he talks about how like the first time he got shot, Rat Kiley was there and he helped like right away and he knew exactly what to do. But like Rat Kiley had also been in the war for like a longer amount of time, and this was like his first. This was Jorgensen's first couple. He was new to it, so like he hadn't really experienced like it. So he had to. It's like the first time you go, like the first volleyball game of the season. Back to sports.
Yeah.
The first volleyball game of the season, you're like really nervous because like you haven't played with like the girls you're playing with. It's a new team, it's a new year. You get really nervous. But by the end of the season, like another game, just another game. You go out. You might have still have a little bit of nerves, but it's not as big as like the first game you had.
Or kind of like the first time we started doing these discussions, we were nervous, and our grades kind of reflect that. But like now that this is our third time doing it, we feel pretty great about it.
I think it's just as more experience you get, like the less he would be able.
The tension's a little less.
Yeah, he would be able to go help him right away instead of taking the 10 extra minutes that it said it took for him to do it. Like going off of what George said, I have a question. Like O'Brien was shot twice while in the war, and the second time he was shot, there was a new medic. The medic took 10 minutes to work up the courage to help him, and O'Brien almost died of shock. Throughout the chapter, O'Brien talks about the aftermath of not being helped and wanting revenge on Georgeson. Why do you feel that O'Brien was so set on getting revenge, and what do you think was the turning point where O'Brien forgave him?
Well, since he waited so long, like he almost died.
Yeah.
That's probably why he wants revenge on him, because he almost lost his life because he was too scared to help him. And the turning point on like why, what was the last part?
Like the turning point on where O'Brien like forgave him. It's like
I think he realized that like
He realized he was turning, like Vietnam was causing him to turn mean, like not just against the Navy, but like against his own soldiers that like screwed up once, and like even though it wasn't that bad, like he would get mad at them. I mean, this was a big deal though because like he almost died from this.
Yeah.
But like he can't get mad at someone who's like never experienced this before. That like he's just got to totally got to learn from it.
he's also like they're part of a team. Like you can't really get mad at a team member. Going back to sports again for more connections since we're all in sports. Like Kylie's a setter. If a hitter gets mad at the setter, then that would be bad because then Kylie might not want to set that hitter, and maybe that hitter is one of the most important like parts. You can't really like get mad at each other. You have to stay as like a team.
It's like he was like when O'Brien's old like troops came and stayed at where he was like stationed at, I guess you could say. He was like the entire time was trying to find someone to have revenge with, and finally like Azar said he would help him.
Yeah, this is our.
Helps him pull the prank, and like halfway through the prank, he's like, "I've had enough. Like we need to stop." But like Azar's like, "No, we gotta finish it." He's like, I think he like felt the pain that like Jorgensen was feeling because he was scared.
Uh-huh.
Like, and he saw this fear in his eyes, and he realized that they're not that different. Like he was still scared.
And you know how Caitlin talked about someone who's froze, right? That's what you said. I think it could be also like that. He froze because it was like he was new to it, and then for him making the mistake, it could be like, oh, maybe he's never tried, like he's never done that before, or it's like really the first time that it's happened.
Kind of like
You just gotta like understand that it's not completely their fault. It's not what they're trying to do. It's just that happened.
He was probably like terrified of making a mistake. Like, and if he made a mistake, like while working on him, he could have killed him anyways.
Mhm.
It's like kind of like an anesthesiologist. Like if they make one wrong move on the patient, they could kill him.
Well, it's kind of like when when a younger kid gets pulled to play varsity sport, and like they're nervous about making a mistake because they're playing with the big dogs, and like if they make a mistake, like
That's like
the hazing thing could come
and
around.
like Jordan was probably nervous for like he was new to it, but like a lot of those soldiers have been there, so like they not necessarily knew what they were doing, but like they had the confidence that they needed.
They
Like
were seasoned.
They were more experienced.
and like with like sports, if you're a sophomore playing with seniors, the seniors have been on the varsity team for at least 2 years, maybe more, so they're a bit more confident in it than if it was the sophomore who's first year.
Yeah, like that happens in wrestling. Like Ben Fostick is really good, and like when he loses, he like really takes it to heart because like he's just not used to losing because he was so good in middle school and like in 8th grade, and then now that he's in high school, he's a freshman. He's not as strong, not as experienced as like all the people that he is wrestling, and then he like just messes up and he takes it to heart. But then like when me or Clayton lose, we're used to it because it's like no offense.
Not saying that we're bad because we're not that bad anymore because we're more experienced.
But like when we lose, we're like better. We're better able to like deal with it and stuff like that because we've like had more time and experience with that.
Why does O'Brien say that he killed the boy when he? Did I ever ask that question?
I don't
You're on your
know.
second one.
I don't remember if you did or not.
Well, we talked about this before. Oh yeah. Why does O'Brien say he killed the boy when he never shot him?
I feel like he said he killed the boy because he was there, so like he felt like he was part of it because he saw him go down. He could describe it, and he like showed it over and over again because he kept describing the same thing, like the star-shaped hole in the eye, or like how he looked like he could be a mathematician, like a math teacher when he's older. Like he saw everything in detail. He might not have been the one that physically pulled the trigger, but he was like the one that was there with it, so he saw it.
Like having a vision of like who the person was and like really knowing like making your own like creation of what he could have been like probably added to the guilt of like that he could have killed him.
Yeah, 'cause, like I have a quote and it goes, "His jaw was in his throat, his upper lip and teeth were gone, his one eye was shut, his other eye was a star-shaped hole, his eyebrows were thin and arched like woman's, his nose was undamaged, there was slight tear in the lobe of the ear, his clean black hair was swept upward into the colic at the rear of his skull, his forehead was slightly freckled, his fingernails were clean, the skin at his left cheek was peeled back in 3 ragged strips, his right cheek was smooth and hairless, there was a butterfly on his shin, his neck was open to the spinal cord, and there was blood in the thick and shiny in the wound that had killed him." So like he might not have been the one, but like O'Brien, like he used imagery when he was using this quote because it described everything so well. But like he might not have been the one that killed it, but if you can describe something that well, like with all those details, it really makes you think like he did kill you. And like back to like the whole war stories being over exaggerated most of the time, so you get the full effect.
This is one of those.
This is like one of those, like he said he killed him, even if he didn't, but he felt like he did. So to get his point across, he said he did.
And like also in the story, there's like I got rid of the page, but like it was talking about how like he was just looking at the body and like examining it, and like him and Kiwa were like there, and someone comes up and he's like, "Dude, you just like trashed that body. You like shot him. It's like a clean shot." And he's like talking about how he just messed him up completely. And like to him, it's like, "Oh, maybe I really did do this because like obviously someone else thought that also."
Yeah.
So then maybe he's like taking it as an accomplishment, sort of. Probably not, because I don't think he really enjoyed having that happen to him. But like he just accepted it because everyone else thought that also. Kind of like. Actually, no, I don't know what I was going on there. Almost. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, if everyone else kind of just said it happened, why deny it? I guess it's not going to change.
Yeah, that's yours.
Go back to it. Okay. Okay, so they get like a call saying like Russians are coming, and like so they start looking at nightlife. So each person like deals with their stress in a different way. Jensen takes vitamins, Cross takes Noadaz, and Kylie like retreats into like himself for 6 days. He doesn't talk to anyone, and then like eventually he just can't stop talking, and then he begins like scratching himself, and he's like complaining about the bugs and whatnot. Why do you think it hit them so hard? Like just kind of like thinking about that. just knowing that something was happening and like just having all of that stress just built up on it. Why did that, mess up just him really, really badly, and then something not as much?
I think it's like a mental strength thing because like for basketball, and this is again very
Back to sports.
different impact to sports, but like basketball, our coach always tells us like to win you have to have like a hard mental strength. Well, some of us don't have it. Like some of us still take things personally, and I feel like in war, some people probably took it a little less because they didn't have like as much tough strength, and they didn't see it as much. Like they more had like I won't say sheltered life, but they didn't see as much before. And like some of them might have had like a more rough life, so they saw like more before the war, so they were like, hey, and like once they start seeing it, they're like, eh.
Since they like knew that people were coming, I mean, it probably like made them very anxious, like and scared for what like could happen. So I think that's probably like why they did all that stuff, is because they were anxious and scared of like what could happen next, because they already lost so many soldiers, like people they knew. They were scared of losing more.
Probably since it's the Russians too, because like I think during this time period, like this is still during the time period of the Cold War, with like the Russians have a new nuclear weapon, America's got a new nuclear weapon. Russians have been to space, America's been to the moon. It's like this is like America's toughest rival that is now coming to Vietnam, and like they feared that Russia could have something new that they could use on them specifically.
I have a quote from my book. It's like, in Vietnam, for instance, Ted Lavender had a habit of popping 4 or 5 tranquilizers every morning. It was his way of coping. Just dealing with the realities and the drugs helped to ease him through the days. So, like, yeah, it might just made it easier for them to realize, like, they could not make it out. Like, the reality of war is, like, you are very good chance that you could be shot. You could die. You won't be able to go home and see everything that you left before. So like it helped them just cope with it.
You can do your question. I'll do mine last since it's like the end of the book.
So when O'Brien was shot for the second time, he was released and transferred to headquarters, Company S4. His old regiment later comes to the headquarters, and he talks about how he misses the brotherhood and the adrenaline of the war. Why do you think he feels this way? Explain.
So you said he was transferred to headquarters and stuff like that. Headquarters, I feel, would just be like sitting in a cubicle, desk job, doing the same thing over and over again, just looking at a computer screen, typing it up, and like doing other like things that aren't really that fun to do. Very like monotonous, and just you do it all the time. You finish a cup of coffee, go get it, and then just do like the same thing over and over, day over day. And I think him saying that he misses like the adrenaline is him like thinking he would rather be doing something other than sitting at a desk.
Well, he created like such a good bond with like some of the soldiers, and like it was like something that was really important to him. So like losing that kind of probably just made him miss it more, and like he probably did miss all the action, like you said, because he wasn't like experiencing new things every day. He was doing the same thing probably.
Because like he's been here for a while too, so like his platoon kind of became his family. So like in essence, he's leaving his family behind again and everything he loved.
It's kind of like sports again.
Kind of like
It's
when a
like-
student graduates.
Yeah, it's like when
and
you
they play the last
graduate
game.
and you leave a sport, and like say you aren't going to do it in college, like you're leaving behind something you loved, and you're leaving behind all of like the bonds that you had with your teammates and coaches.
I miss Kyle. Sorry. Can you ask your question?
I'll do mine last.
When O'Brien was writing this book, why did he include multiple stories of other soldiers and not just stories about himself?
He wanted to share like a lot of the people that he wrote about were people that died and were really important to him. And so since he was like living, he wanted to share the memory of them through his stories of them. And like he didn't have to tell much about himself because he's still alive. So
Yeah.
like sharing the stories of people who died just like spreads their legacy and their memory on.
So like when someone dies, like the way like you remember them, or like people relatives or stuff. He's like, you pass on stories of them. So like I feel like this is his way of getting people to like remember the great people that he had met that didn't make it through the war like he did. And so he's just trying to like make people remember them as the way he remembered them.
Kind of like when he was talking about the whole thing with Kiowa, with how Kiowa died, and when he went back to Vietnam, he took the moccasins and he buried them where he thought Kiowa was killed at. And then like with the Norman Bowker story too, like he put that chapter in there because Norman Bowker killed himself after the war because he couldn't take the stress anymore. He couldn't take the guilt of him being there with Kiowa.
Like Norman Bowker like wrote him a letter and like asked him to almost like write a story for him because like he wanted his legacy to be remembered, but he couldn't do it because he couldn't deal with the pain of the war.
Yeah.
So like it could be because maybe he just doesn't have the right story in his own like way. Like he didn't have things that happened to him like it happened to other people. So then he can get like maybe a better message across by using someone else as an example, or how like sometimes a teacher will use like someone else's homework saying like this is how it should be done, or how Mrs. French pointed out today that you and Tiffany had really good I don't remember what they're called. Reflections. It's more of just kind of showing that there's maybe something better than just like what he did himself.
And sometimes writing stories like about yourself can be harder
Yeah.
to write because like it's a personally happened to you, so it like brings back more emotions than like writing a story about someone else.
And maybe he wants to keep some things to himself because like that's just really his own stuff that he wants to keep, I guess maybe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, just going back to that, like in notes, I remember O'Brien was talking about how he wrote the Speaking of Courage because Norman Bowker couldn't say it because he said that too. He's like he wasn't a literary person like O'Brien was, so he had to write the story for him.
Yeah.
my last question was a lot like Kylie's about why Kylie shut off his toe and stuff. So I don't really have one for that, I guess.
Toward the end of the book, O'Brien presents a very important quote. He says, "We kept the dead alive with stories." What do you think this quote ultimately means, and how does it reflect on the whole purpose of the book?
I think it kind of goes off of Clayton's question, like, what quote did you say?
We kept the dead alive with stories.
Like, he wants to remember the people that he was super close with during probably the hardest time that he's ever going to go through in his life. Like, he wants to keep their stories alive, and he wants people to know how great they were, and it's like a way for him to cope with them not being there anymore. And like when he remembers stories, he remembers them, so he wants other people to remember them too.
Because it's like since these people are gone, they can't tell their own story.
Yeah.
So like with him telling the world their story, it keeps their legacy alive.
I like that. What Clayton said because I mean, you know how he said earlier that
Norman kind of
he
tells his
wasn't
story.
Yeah, he wasn't able to tell his own story, so I mean, he does have something to say now, I guess.
I have a quote from the book, and it was like, "But this too is true. Stories can save us. I'm 43 years old and a writer now, and even still, right here, I keep dreaming Linda alive." It's like Linda's another. We didn't bring her up, but like it was like who he was in love with when he was younger, and like she passed away, and like he wrote a whole chapter about her, and it might not have had like direct relation, like she wouldn't have been in war, but he still wanted to bring her in because like he reflected on how he felt about like all the guys that in war died because of her. Like if you've ever seen a dead body, he goes back and says that's the first dead body he ever saw was her after she passed away. And so like he's like the stories or him writing them down is saving him from going through things that like other people might have been going through.
The book is like just full of a bunch of little stories compiled all into like one. And I think that like just a bunch of the stories in the book goes towards like his whole purpose of the book, that stories like keep people alive that have died.
Yeah.
Also, I had this quote. I wrote this in one of my journals, and it's just like I thought it was kind of an important quote. It says, "War makes you a man, war makes you dead." So like it just shows like how there were two different effects on the men from the war, and like it made them more manly and like stronger and courageous, but like it also killed them, like emotionally and like mentally, you know?
Yeah.
I just thought that was important.
We're done.
Does anybody have anything else they wanted to say or anything? I think we're
I
good.
think we're good.
Okay.